The Second World War was a conflict of unimaginable scale, fought across continents and oceans. Yet for the individual soldier, the war was often a far more intimate and terrifying struggle. It was a battle fought not only against a visible enemy, but also against an unseen one, relentless, agonizing pain. A soldier's life was a constant dance with danger, where a moment's inattention could lead to a life-altering injury. In the chaos of combat, medical aid was a beacon of hope, but it was a fragile one. Wounded men were often carried for miles over treacherous terrain, their pain growing with every jolt and every passing minute. Infections were a constant threat, turning minor wounds into deadly battles for life. The sheer number of casualties often overwhelmed the medical corps. Supply lines, the lifelines that carried everything from ammunition to food, were frequently targeted and severed. Imagine the desperation of a medic, faced with a line of wounded men, their faces etched with suffering and an empty medical kit. It was in these moments of dire need that human ingenuity, born of necessity, was forced to find another way. The ability to manage pain was not a matter of comfort, but of survival itself. A soldier consumed by agony could not be moved easily, could not maintain the will to live, and could not endure the long, arduous process of healing. The battle against pain was as critical as any fought with rifles and bayonets. It was a silent, desperate struggle waged in the shadows of the larger conflict, one that would push medics to look for answers in the most unexpected of places. The field medic was a unique figure in the theatre of war. A soldier whose mission was to preserve life amidst the relentless machinery of death. They carried bags filled not with grenades, but with bandages, sulphur powder, and the precious vials of morphine that could grant a soldier a temporary reprieve from torment. These medics were often little more than boys themselves, yet they bore the immense responsibility of being the first line of defence against suffering. A major offensive could produce hundreds, even thousands of casualties in a single day. A medic might be faced with a terrible choice: to use the last dose on one grievously wounded soldier, knowing that 10 more lay waiting, their groans a constant, haunting chorus. The absence of a simple syringe of painkiller could be as fatal as a bullet, pushing a soldier beyond the limits of their endurance. Medics, cut off from their supply chains, had to become more than just technicians applying modern medicine. They began to listen to whispers of local knowledge, remedies passed down through generations by villagers who had long understood the healing properties of the plants in their own backyards. This was not a formal process dictated by high command, but a grassroots movement born of sheer necessity, a quiet revolution happening in the trenches and forests of occupied lands. Could that willow tree by the river offer more than just shade? Could the spices in a local market hold the key to easing a soldier's dental agony? These questions were not academic. They were matters of life and death. The medics who pursued these answers were pioneers, bridging the gap between established medical practice and the forgotten wisdom of herbal remedies, all while under the constant threat of enemy fire. Among the many plants that offered a glimmer of hope, one in particular stood out: the willow tree. Ancient civilizations, from the Egyptians to the Greeks, had documented the use of willow bark to treat fever and inflammation. Hippocrates himself, the father of medicine, had prescribed it to his patients. Yet on the battlefield, where those modern drugs were absent, the willow's secret was ripe for rediscovery. A medic stationed in rural France might learn from an elderly farmer that a tea brewed from willow bark could soothe aches and pains. This was not scientific knowledge in the conventional sense. It was folk wisdom, passed down through oral tradition and practical experience. For the desperate medics, the source of the information mattered less than its potential effectiveness. Medics, often with the help of local civilians, would gather bark from the willow trees that grew abundantly in the war-torn landscapes. They experimented with different methods of preparation. The first time a soldier, writhing in pain, found a small measure of relief after drinking a bitter willow bark tea, it must have felt like a miracle. This rediscovery was a profound moment. In an era defined by industrial warfare and synthetic chemistry, the humble willow tree emerged as an unlikely ally. The knowledge spread not through official channels or medical journals, but from soldier to soldier, from medic to medic. A whispered secret that offered a powerful weapon in the ongoing war against pain. It was a testament to the resilience of both the human spirit and the enduring power of nature. While willow bark became the cornerstone of this natural pharmacopoeia, it was often part of a trio of powerful substances used by resourceful medics. The second key ingredient was clove oil. Cloves, the dried flower buds of a tree native to the Spice Islands, were more than just a culinary spice. For centuries they had been a staple of traditional dentistry due to their remarkable anesthetic and antiseptic properties. In the chaos of war, dental emergencies were common and excruciating. A broken tooth or a raging abscess could incapacitate a soldier as effectively as any wound, the throbbing pain making it impossible to eat, sleep, or focus. Access to cloves or clove oil depended heavily on the theatre of war. A small vial of clove oil in a medic's kit was worth its weight in gold, offering immediate targeted relief for the agony of a dental infection, numbing the nerve and helping to prevent the spread of bacteria. The third element of this natural toolkit was perhaps the most readily available: alcohol. In nearly every theatre of war, some form of strong spirit could be found. Its primary medical use was as a disinfectant. Together, these three substances, willow, clove, and alcohol, formed a powerful and versatile triumvirate. Willow bark provided a general systemic pain relief, reducing fever and inflammation throughout the body. It was a remarkably effective combination, a testament to the ingenuity of those who pieced this knowledge together from fragments of ancient wisdom and the raw materials at hand. The preparation of these natural remedies had to be simple, requiring minimal equipment and achievable under the most stressful conditions imaginable. For willow bark, the most common method was to create a decoction, essentially a strong, bitter tea. A medic would first need to identify a willow tree, recognizable by its long, slender leaves and flexible branches, often found near water. Using a standard-issue knife, they would carefully shave off strips of the inner bark, which is where the active compounds are most concentrated. Once a sufficient quantity of bark was gathered, perhaps a handful, it would be placed in a soldier's metal canteen or a scavenge pot with water. The mixture was then brought to a boil over a small concealed fire, often a smokeless Dakota fire hole dug into the ground to avoid attracting enemy attention. The resulting liquid was a dark, intensely bitter brew. It was strained through a piece of cloth to remove the woody fragments, and then given to the wounded soldier to drink, often cooled just enough to be palatable. For clove oil, the application was far more direct. If the medic had managed to acquire the oil itself, the process was simple. Alcohol's role was multifaceted. In some cases, a small amount of alcohol was added to the willow bark tea. The core principles of using willow, clove and alcohol were remarkably consistent, but their application varied depending on the environment and the cultural context of the fighting. On the vast and frozen Eastern Front, Soviet partisans and soldiers faced extreme conditions where medical supplies were almost non-existent. Here, the knowledge of the forest was paramount. They relied heavily on the abundant willow and birch trees, often brewing potent teas that were shared amongst the wounded. In the dense jungles of Burma and the islands of the Pacific, Allied soldiers fighting the Japanese faced a different set of challenges and a different natural pharmacy. While willow trees were not as common, other plants with analgesic properties were known to local populations. Medics learned from indigenous guides about plants that could be used to create poultices for reducing swelling and pain. The specific plants and methods may have changed from the frozen steppes of Russia to the sun-drenched islands of the Pacific, but the underlying principle remained the same. It was a testament to the shared human drive to alleviate suffering. The remarkable effectiveness of these natural remedies is not a matter of magic, but of simple, elegant chemistry. The active ingredient in willow bark is a compound called salicin. When a person consumes a tea made from willow bark, the body metabolizes the salicin, converting it into salicylic acid. This substance is a natural anti-inflammatory and pain reliever. It works by inhibiting the body's production of prostaglandins, which are hormone-like compounds that signal pain and inflammation. In essence, the willow bark tea was a natural, less refined version of one of the most common medicines in the world today: aspirin, which is acetyl salicylic acid. The science behind clove oil is equally straightforward. Its primary active component is a chemical called eugenol. Eugenol is a powerful natural anesthetic and antiseptic. When applied to a sore tooth or gum, it works directly on the nerve endings, blocking the transmission of pain signals to the brain. Alcohol's role is perhaps the most widely understood. High-proof alcohol is a potent disinfectant because it denatures proteins. This process of sterilization was crucial in preventing tetanus, gangrene and sepsis, which were often more lethal than the initial wound. The combination of these three substances created a synergistic effect. The medics were, in effect, practicing a form of battlefield chemistry, using their ingenuity to unlock the healing power hidden within these common substances. The lessons learned in the crucible of World War II are not mere historical footnotes. They are a vital and practical guide for the modern survivalist hiker or anyone who ventures into the wild. Today we are accustomed to having a pharmacy at our fingertips, but in a survival situation that can all disappear in an instant. An unexpected injury on a remote trail, a natural disaster that cuts off supply lines, or simply a forgotten first aid kit can leave us just as vulnerable as a soldier on a severed front line. The knowledge of how to identify and use nature's pharmacy is a skill that can, quite literally, save a life. For today's survivalist, the process begins with learning to identify the key plants. The willow tree is one of the most important. It is crucial to learn its features: the long, narrow leaves, the flexible stems, and its preference for moist soil near rivers and lakes. A good field guide to local flora is an indispensable tool. The modern preparation method mirrors the one used by the medics. Understanding the power of alcohol, even in the form of hand sanitizer or alcoholic beverages, as a disinfectant for wounds and tools remains a critical piece of knowledge. The ingenuity and resilience of the WWII medics serve as a powerful inspiration. By learning these skills, we honour their legacy and equip ourselves with a timeless wisdom.